just walk me through the process here when a client walks into a Centrelink office, either you or Mr Williamson. What's the practical realities of this legislation if it's passed?
Okay, so customers will be selected for a drug test trial and they'll receive a notification by their appropriate notification pathway, which could be letter, SMM.
And how do they get identified as receiving that letter?
So they're selected through a random selection process in each of those areas.
You're not going to be having particular KPIs that say you have to get this certain sort of selection criteria. You're just going to pick a name out of a hat. Is that?
That's correct. It's purely random selection.
Yep. And then?
So then they will receive a text message 48 hours prior to their appointment to remind them. At the appointment, when they attend the appointment,
this will be to the provider that you've yet to ascertain who that will be if the legislation's successful.
So the appointment will be held at the Services Australia offices. So they will come into...
I'm sorry, Miss Mitchell, I just missed that bit.
So their appointment will be to come into the Service Australia offices.
Okay.
And the DHS staff member will advise the customer at that time that they are required to take a drug test. They won't be advised in the letter. They will be told that when they come through the door. They'll also be provided with information advice about the consequences of refusing the test, and they'll also be provided with information and advice around actions if a positive drug test is returned.
Okay, so the letter they receive will be, hello, Mrs Smith, you're due to come into the office on this particular date at this particular time, and there will be no reason given.
That's correct.
Okay, so now they've been told in the office that they've got to undergo a drug test and what the penalties will be if they don't go ahead with it?
That's correct.
And then what happens, Ms Mitchell?
So then they would be either taken to the appropriate area in the Services Australia office to undertake a saliva test. Their privacy will be maintained. I mean, we have built these rooms particularly to support the privacy of people undertaking these tests. If they are asked for a hair or a urine sample test, they will be directed to the provider's rooms.
So when they walk into the office, they're expected to have that test done then and there?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay, and with the staff who are directing the client, what support and preparation are staff receiving in order to be notifying clients of this situation?
So, Services Australia, Department of Human Services, has comprehensive training and support programs for our staff to deal with all number of clients and client issues as they come through the door.
And have they dealt with this before?
Well, certainly they've dealt with clients who have drug and alcohol issues as they come into our service centres. But
have they ever told someone that you need to now be drug tested?
I don't believe so.
So what kind of preparation and training are your staff receiving to be in a position to inform a client that they have to undergo drug testing?
So the security of our staff and people in the service centres is paramount to the department. So we have our staff undergoing all sorts of mandatory customer aggression training for service delivery staff.
What are they undergoing to tell a client you now have to have drug testing? What preparation is the department doing for this particular piece of legislation?
There will be ongoing training for the staff to prepare them. I can't point to that at the moment because it's still under development.
Are staff being prepared now in that training?
No, because the legislation has not passed.
It certainly hasn't passed, but I'm just trying to understand, and I will go to you, Mr. Williamson, in a moment around the stakeholders. I'm just wondering, though, that the department's got a fairly significant piece of social trials across these 3 locations. I'm just keen to know what kind of thorough preparation is being planned for your staff. So please take that on notice, Ms. Mitchell.
I can point out that we have been considering it, and there have been a lot of internal discussions about how we prepare our staff for these situations, just as we prepare them for any situations dealing with people coming into our service centres. And this has certainly been a consideration, but training has not yet been rolled out to those staff, but certainly we have been preparing internally. We wouldn't leave it till the last minute.
It's just a different situation, isn't it, really, when you tell a client they now have to undergo a drug test, as opposed to someone walking in who's already perhaps under the influence. Obviously, you would have security there to assist staff, but in this instance, what we're asking, if the legislation goes through, is for your staff to be the front line of insisting on clients taking drug tests, which may not be something that a client would want to do. So I'm just wondering if you can provide to the committee what kind of training is being done in preparation should this legislation go through for your staff.
Ms Mitchell's just adding to her previous answer, Senator McCarthy.
Sure, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Senator. I have just been advised by our team that there will be mandatory training on managing customer behaviours, how drug and alcohol influences our customers, and the processes of the trial, and that has already been developed. I was unaware of that before. I apologise.
Okay, so if I can just expand on that while we're waiting for my other answer to come forward. Now, there's an assumption, though, that the people who are asked to come in are already drug affected in your answer there. So I'm just wondering, how are your staff being prepared to deal with, the mums and dads who come in who've never taken any drugs or had any issues, and just their general fear at just not wanting to go through this process? What kind of training is being taken there?
So managing customer behaviours is looking at all customer behaviours. It's not just focused on aggressive behaviours. We have other training, in fact, for all staff in service centres around managing aggressive behaviour in the service centres. So this will take into account all behaviours, including.
Yeah, we're talking about aggression in your response there, Ms. Williamson. Ms.
Mitchell.
But for many people, just fear and upset, causing all kinds of medical issues to come forward. How will your staff be ready for that kind of response?
The staff in Service Australia, Department of Human Services centres are highly trained in dealing with all sorts of Australians who come through the door, and we have not everyone comes in for a drug testing trial, but some people.
Well, there shouldn't be anyone, should there, at the moment?
No, there aren't. Sorry. But many people who come into the offices are upset for any number of reasons, and our staff received ongoing training to deal with vulnerable clients, customers, and with upset customers.
Okay, and Ms Mitchell, just how many staff are being involved in this particular training now, the mandatory training that you just...
I understand that the mandatory training will be rolled out to all service staff in the trial sites, and it will be optional for any other staff in the department.
And how many staff is that?
I'd have to take that on notice.